Hey, algebra students. In this lesson, we're going to be doing something in algebra that starts off easy. This first step is easy. It's not going to seem easy at first, but trust me, this isn't that bad. But then when we get into the algebra, we're dealing with polynomials side of things. Things get a little more difficult. Okay, so you need to really pay attention to this video because I'm going to show you how to do this. It's going to be the same process for numbers and for polynomials. It's just you got to really understand what we're getting at with the process here. And the first thing we need to ask, we're trying to find least common multiples in this lesson. What in the world is a least common multiple? All right, well, let's just take two easy numbers. We'll do 8 and 12 here from letter B. We'll just use these two. We're not going to use 17 yet. And here's the question. If I multiply 8 a bunch of times by different numbers, okay, what is multiplication? It's just repeat addition, right? 8 times 8 times 2 is the same as 8 plus 8. 8 times 3 is 8 plus 8 plus 8. With multiplication, I am repeat adding my first number a certain number of times. And if I repeat add 12, it goes 12, and then 12 times 2 is 24, and then 12 times 3 is 36, and then 12 times 4 is 48. When I make those sequences of numbers that are the like each number times a slightly higher multiple, 8 times 1, 8 times 2, 8 times 3, 8 times 4, eventually I come up with a number that 8 has in common with 12. Let's see, 8 times 3 is 24. 12 times 2 is 24. So 24 is the first time where these two numbers multiply to the same thing, to the same number, and therefore 24 would be the least common multiple of 8 and 12. Now, with numbers like 16 and 42, this gets a little more complicated. 42 times 2 is 84. I wonder if 16 can be multiplied a certain number of times to make 84. Let's find out. 16 times 1 is 16. Times 2 is 32. Times 3 is, I'm already 48. Times 4 is 64. Times 5 is 80. And then times 6 is 96. It never turned into 84. It went right from 80 to 96. So now I have to go up by another multiple of 42 and figure out if this would be really hard to do the guess and check way. Okay, so that's what I've been doing as I've just been multiplying and then seeing if the other term would multiply to the same thing. I'm going to show you a method that works to find the least common multiple that is really handy. This is going to be sort of similar to where we're finding the greatest common factor. And you're going to need to keep these two different processes that find two very different things straight. What might make things even more complicated today is that in the second part of this lesson, you might have to use the greatest common factor to find the least common multiple. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, let's see how we can find the least common multiple of numbers, not expressions. Okay, so first, we need to write each number as a product of prime factors. Then we use every factor of the given numbers as a factor of the least common multiple, using each factor the greatest number of times it's a factor in any number. Now, that is a mouthful. Let's see what that means. So what we're going to do letter A, and we're going to find the least common multiple of 16, and 42. Now, I'm just going to say this. If you are more comfortable making a factor tree, make a factor tree. I'm going to do this without factor trees because it's a little hard to do. It's time consuming in my computer program. If I was doing this on paper, I probably would make a factor tree because it's a lot easier. 16 is 2 times 8. 8 is 2 times 4, and 4 is 2 times 2. So 16 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. I could have figured that out using a factor tree. 42 is 2 times, this one's a harder, 21. 2 times 21. 21 is 3 times 7. So 42 is 2 times 3 times 7. These are all the prime factors. Now, I'm going to make a list of all of the factors that were used to make these two numbers. There's 2, there's 3, and there's 7. Now, I need to go back and look at how many times each of these factors were used for each number and choose the one that was used. I need to choose the number of times that is the greatest for each of these factors. 2 was used 4 times to find 16. So in the first number, 2 is used 4 times. In the second number, 2 is only used once. I need to take this number, the greatest number of times it appears. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 3 only appears once, so I'm only going to include 3 once. 7 only appears once, so I'm only going to include 7 once. This is my least common multiple. I'm going to multiply all these numbers together. Okay, imagine little multiplication symbols in between. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. All right, we already established that up here. Times 3 is 48. And now I need to do 48 times 7. That's not that hard. It's just 350 minus 14, which is 336. 336 is the least common multiple. Now, can you imagine how annoying it would have been to do this letter A by guess and check? Because I would have multiplied 42 times 3, and I would have got 126. And I would have tried to find, oh, it doesn't match up with 126. Okay, now what did I guess? What is 42 times 4? And then I keep multiplying 16 by bigger numbers to see if it matches. And it would take a long time for me to get to 336. With this method, I identify 336 as the least common multiple very quickly. Hey, let's just double check our answer. You could do this using a calculator. I'm going to do this using Google Calculator. So it's 336. I'm just going to make sure 336 divides by 16. Yep. And does 336 divide by 42? Yep. There we go. So that is my least common multiple. Let's do the next one. We don't just have to do this with 2 numbers. We can do this with 3 numbers. 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. Right, that's just one that I know. 12, let's see, well, that's going to be 2 times 6, and 6 is 2 times 3. 2 times 2 times 3, that's the prime factorization of 12. And then 17, why, there is no prime factorization. 17, well, I guess there is. 17 is a prime number, so 17 is its prime factorization. All right, so now I have 2, I have 3, I have 17. The most number of times that 2 is used in any one of the numbers is 3. So I'm going to include 2 3 times. Notice I didn't include it 5 times because it doesn't appear 5 times in one number. It appears 3 times in the number 8. So I have to include it 3 times. 3 appears once. 17 appears once. If we do the math here, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Times 2 is 24. I'm going to have to look up 24 times 17 because that one I cannot do in my head. I could do it on paper. It really wouldn't be that hard. 24 times 17 is 408. Let's double check our work and see if 408 can be divided by 17. Well, we know it can. Let's just make sure. So 408 divided by 17 is 24. 408 divided by 3 is 136, and 408 divided by our other number was, oh, did I do 3? 408 divided by 12 and divided by 8. It should be 12 and 8 that I'm divided by. Why 3? 12 is 34, and divided by 8 is 51. So it multiplies to make all 3 of the numbers that I was trying. This is the least common multiple. Okay. Now, all I prove when I do my check is that it divides evenly by all 3 of these, which is a requirement. But the reason I know it's the least common multiple is because I used this method to find it. This proves that it's the least common multiple. Letter C. All right. Whoa. What do we do when we have variables involved and it's not just numbers anymore? We need to write each expression as a product of prime factors with an exponent of 1. So I can't do c squared, but I can do c times c. I can't do d to the 7th, but I can do d times d times d times d times d times d times d, right? So that's what I need to do, and then use every factor as a factor of the least common multiple. The greatest number of times it's a factor of any one of the numbers. So this is the same thing, except now we're just including letters as well. So let's do letter C. 6 is 3 times 2, or 2 times 3. And then it's going to be 2 times 3 times C times C times D times D times D times D times D, D, D. There we go. All right. The next one is going to be 15 factors to 3 times 5 times C times C times D times C times C times D times D. What is the least common multiple of these? Well, okay, let's look at the numbers first. I have a 2, a 3, and a 5. And notice that 3 is only ever used once in any one term. 3, 3. Okay, I don't include it twice. I include it once because it was only used one time in each term. This is going to be 2 times 3 times 5. And then C, the most time that was used in one term was 5. So it's going to be C times C. That's not a C. C times C times C times C times C. And then D was 7 times in the first term. So I need to include D 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then 2 times 3 times 5. So now I'm going to bring it all back together. 2 times 3 is 6. Times 5 is 30. So it's going to be 30. C to the 5th, D to the 7th is going to be my least common multiple between those two expressions. All right, on to letter D. In letter D, we have 3 terms, 4k to the 4th p cubed n squared. Let's just break that one out right away. 2 times 2 times k times k times k times k times p times p times p times n. My next term is going to be 5 k times k, p times p times p. And then my last one is going to be 20, which breaks down to 2 times 10. 10 is 2 times 5. 2 times 2 times 5 times n times n times n times n times k times k times. All right, so what are all my factors? I have a 2. I have a 5. I have a k. I have a p. I have an n. I think that's everything. Let me just double check. That's everything. Okay. Now, what was it of all my terms in any one term? What was the most times 2 is used? 2 is used 2 times in the first and 2 times in the last. In any one term, what was the most times 5 is used? Once, once, once. All right. What about k? What's the most number of k's that appears in one factorization? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I need to have k times k times k times k. P appears 3 times here and 3 times here. So 3 is the most. And then N is going to be 4. N, 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 N. And when I bring this number all back together, I'm going to multiply it together. It's going to be 4 times 5 is 20. K to the 4th, P to the 3rd, N to the 3rd. And that's how we do that. All right. Excellent. And that's how we find the least common multiple.